I'm over here at the shop on a Sunday right now because of this, we'll call it the CB thing going on. There's really nowhere else to go. So I'm over here working on these parts here. And I noticed, well, let me show you something here. Just study. Interest. See how many in a spree. Here where all the processes are. Scroll down to the bottom. You can see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but right here there's 782 processes in this particular program for this part that I'm working on. So anyway, I'm over here on Sunday working on this one of these parts. Right now I'm running the been running the kind of the first operation in the middle of this part on the real part, and you can actually see now where these holes are going to. This particular hole here, right in here, goes down and intersects in here. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. Let me get a light. You can see, I don't know if you can see, there's a lot of coolant there, but there's a welded in little plug in here, and that hole, the remaining part of that hole, let's see if I can shine the light down. Maybe you can see it here. You see that light? I'm shining it from over here. That hole intersects up here into this recess. I presume they're running wiring or something down there, and it's intersecting with something that goes in this pocket and then it goes down this hole and further down the part here. But this is just the roughing operation to rough off these areas and drill these holes through here, which will later be finished machined, of course. So working on that. Now the next thing coming up is going to be to there's a passageway that goes through here and intersects the larger hole that comes from the other end of the part down this direction. So I'm working on that, and I made a few posts here on Instagram about this tooling and everything. This ended up taking 114 tools to do this operation. Well, actually to do the end here and the ID work, this part and the center section of this part, not including this end. Well, maybe it did. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, I think for total to machine this part it takes 114 tools, and these are the ones that wouldn't fit in the tool changer, had to exchange out. But I don't have to like change these for every operation. Some of these go with the first operations and I'm not running them right now, but this is the various tooling. I had questions on the Instagram post. These holders are a Kaiser brand. They call Big Daishowa holders. Here's one of the shrink holders that I made in a previous video, as well as this shaping tool here. And so I predominantly use these holders that made by Big Daishowa mostly for milling tools in this machine. I like the quality of this tooling, and it runs real true, and works good, but it is expensive. And then these, of course, are Sandvik turning tools here and here. Silent bar on this grooving tool. A Guring drill here. All of these tools, like this tool here, as well as, I don't know if you can see this very clearly, these tools here are custom tools that I ground on my grinder. Iskar boring tools here, although there's actually in addition to these, I think there's 9 total boring heads in this operation, or these operations on this part as well. But on the Instagram post, I think Tom Lipton made a comment, like how, this cost of this tooling and everything, and like if you want to be in a machine shop or start a machine shop, I think he said, this is what you're dealing with, and by and large, that might be so, but this is an awfully elaborate job, and generally jobs don't take this much tooling and instrumentation, like measuring instruments, things like this kind of stuff here, or these things, these bore gauges. When I first started, I didn't have any of this stuff. I've accumulated it over many years of working on these type of parts that I do. But if you want to do this kind of work, yes, it takes this kind of effort, and these aren't inexpensive tools. I believe this end mill chuck right here is about maybe $700 or $800 just for the chuck. Not to mention the collets that go into it, which are probably about, I don't know, $60 a piece. The collets that go in these are even more expensive than that. But you got to pay for quality. I do use some ER tooling. It's mostly in the machine. In fact, we could go back here and look at the also, let me get before we go back there, let me get a flashlight or something so we might be able to see better in the dark. There's nobody here today because again of the CV thing. They're not working on Sunday over here. I won't use the name because YouTube will demonetize the video if I do that, or they have been doing that anyway. Let me put the light here. I can't jog this tool changer with the door open. I don't know if you can maybe you could see, and we'll just run. See, there's right there's 1, 2, 3 of the boring heads right here. The ITS boring head. Now this is an ER32 Sandvik ER32 collet chuck. Another ITS boring head, and another one here. Another one there. And that one there, which I made the special boring bar in one of the videos. Got to jog further down here. So that's if you remember, I made a video on making this bar with this head. And then this is another one that I need. And this one right here to bore some small holes. 219 in diameter, I think they were, 0.219. But you can see the tool changer in here, or the magazine, the tool changer magazine. This holds 80 tools in this machine, and just isn't quite enough to do this particular setup. There's a lot of different sizes of features and things in this part, and thread milling cutters, various drill sizes. The light's not too good in here, so you might not be able to see. Maybe if I can hold this flashlight. Well, anyway, thought that might be interesting. So that's that. You can see there's nobody here today. Like I said before, nothing's turned on except what I'm using. I thought I'd make a little video of what I use for a measuring equipment. Maybe this might be interesting. You can see I use a lot of these bore gauge things, dial bore gauges. I prefer instruments with dials on them rather than digital. Now I do use, the only instruments I like to use that are digital are depth type gauges, because with depth measurements you can zero it out and take different depths. If you notice, here's a digital depth mic here, and here's some of these caliper style ones. Here's this is the first depth mic I ever had, really. It's actually missing parts on it. And that goes with this this here. This is a drawer out of my Gershner toolbox, one of the drawers from the garage, and the only reason I got it here is because it has the anvils for that particular depth mic that I use. This, I believe, is an ID mic. Well, help if I open the right side. This is an ID mic. This is a small one, Mitutoyo brand. I'm not really stuck on any particular brand of instrument. You know, you might notice that this is some balls that you measure API grooves. I had a earlier video I made on that subject. These are just Fowler. This is a set of Fowler balls, you know, like ball bearings. These come in handy a lot of times if you want to measure you know, like countersink diameters. You could calculate it. If you can the depth of the ball that goes into the countersink, you can figure out what diameter you're going to. That's kind of what I use them for a lot. There. These are just some regular micrometers, Mueller gauge for doing internal, like O-rings or something, measurements. This is a very handy instrument here. This measures the width of things, inside and outside dimensions. You can measure in between here. It's got two different scales on here for measuring both inside those two discs and outside the two discs. So I use this a lot. This is a very useful instrument. Various dial indicators. I think I got this Brown and Sharp one mounted on a one of these little Indical things, I think they call it. Here's a Mitutoyo. I don't use this very often. The reason I bought this indicator was I need to get up into a bore, a small bore, and measure the run out of something, and this is the only shape that would do it decently. Most other indicators are too wide up here, and that's the reason I bought that. Otherwise I really wouldn't have it. I don't use it except for that situation usually. Thread wires, punches. Now these are just tools I've accumulated. Radius gauges, snap gauges, and I think this is just some pin vices. So this is something special I made to measure with a dial bore gauge. So if I take apart one of these bore gauges and mount the thing in here like this, and I take this piece and mount it up here, I needed to measure the ID of something around a boss on the inside of a bore. And maybe I'll put a picture of the part up. I think I got a picture, a photograph somewhere of the part so you can get an idea, but I had to get up in there and measure the ID that surrounded this boss, but you can't get a regular dial bore gauge in there in that situation. So I made that tool special, or that attachment, I guess you might say, special. This is what that little Brown and Sharp indicator is mounted on this thing. One of these things on this part. I got to measure the inside of a snap ring groove that's very, I don't know if you can see that, it's very narrow, 26 thousandths wide, and this is the only thing I can get in there with. This is a special tool I made to measure there was a part that had a this is the set gauge for it, like this, to set the well, actually this is to set the zero here. It's no longer zeroed on this here, because there was this these grooves that went down at angles, and I had to measure that angle dimension at a specific point along that groove, and so I made this special indicator to do that. It's not zeroed right now, but this is the gauge I made also to zero it, so when this was reading the low, I would have that on zero. It's moved since then because I haven't been using it. This is one of the I only have a few of these right now. When I had the bigger shop, I had a whole set of these, but this is a 3-point mic. This is the Starrett brand, although these are identical to the Fowler brand, which are actually, all of these are actually made by Bowers for Starrett and Fowler, and the parts are interchangeable. You know, you think you're buying a Starrett thing, but you're actually buying a Bowers. And even the quality thing says Starrett on here, but it also says Bowers right here. So Starrett must just rebrand it or something, or they rebrand it for Starrett. I don't know. And here's this gauge I made in an earlier video. This arms, but this is actually a gauge maker. This part of it here has different arms, and you measure the threads, ID threads with this, and they have a little software program, which is a very handy software actually. I think you can buy it separate from a gauge maker, and it's like much nicer than going to the machinery handbook and getting the dimensions of your threads, as well as pipe threads and API thread, everything. Well, almost everything. It does, like buttress threads and everything, gives you the pitch diameters and the gauge dimensions, everything. But they also use it for their particular measuring instruments, so that you know where to set these at with a set of gauge blocks. So that's but I was using that on this part again in my earlier video to measure the width of a key with these special arms that I made. So these, like I said, I don't know if you're seeing this very well or not. Kind of doing this on the fly. And put this back where it was. I think I had it in here. I was waiting for those, you know, these rubber mats that come with, or Kennedy ones. Supposedly I ordered some, but they haven't come in yet. I can put them on the bottoms of these drawers. So I just bought this Kennedy box so that I can get a little bit better organized with this stuff around here. This is some tooling that I'm accumulated for this particular job right here. This is like the extra tooling, or the, you know, the spare tooling, if you will, for that job. These are some more various. This is the little box for that gem thing that I showed you right here. This thing. These things work all right. I'm not real wild about them, but they do work all right. In fact, let me go back here to these bore gauges. These die test bore gauge set. I have a set I'll show you in a second, but I prefer this anvil style. If you can see that, this one that is kind of flat with the small corner radius on the tip of it. I prefer this over the spherical style because you can feel this finish of the bore much better, and of course you can get down to the bottom of a shallower hole with that. So I kind of prefer that over the spherical ones. In fact, I think that set, this is the original set that I got. And it came with two of these, like these indicators were mounted in here, kind of like this. Two of them. I don't have two loose ones. Well, this one would theoretically fit here. There was two indicators like that, sort of mounted in here, and it came with all the end pieces and the ring gauges to set them. But I don't typically use these ring gauges in here unless it was very close to the diameter I want. I'll usually set these on gauge blocks. A set of gauge blocks, sort of similar to this kind of setup, but at the diameter I want. And I'll use that to set it, so I'm setting it at the exact diameter that I want to measure. I don't know how linear these things are, and if you can set like a half-inch on a half-inch ring gauge, but you're measuring like 500 and something. See, the next one step up is 550. So if you're in between those sizes, I don't know how linear that would be within 25 thousandths difference, because these are every 50 thousandths actually is what these are. So if I got a dimension that's close to half an inch, I'll go with this ring gauge. But if I've got something in between a half an inch and 550, say on this size number 34, I'll set up gauge blocks like this and set it on the gauge blocks. These two are set up for some dial bore gauges I'm using on this job right here, so that's why I got that set up that way. So anyway, that I don't typically leave the dial indicators in this box anymore, but I have a little ring gauge I had special made for a job here that's like I say, in between. You can see it's 0.1877 diameter. It's in between the set gauges, and I wanted to be very precise to this diameter because the tolerance was like a half a thousandth, and I don't trust necessarily to set, I don't know what size that is. That's 200. And see, the next step down is 180. So this is 7.7 thousandths different. And I don't know how linear these gauges are to trust that to a half a thousandth of an inch. So I don't typically, you know, if you're only dealing with a few thousandths, maybe that would be fine. This set of blocks that's a Mitutoyo set. You can see I don't know if you can see that right there. That these are set up out of there right now, so some of the parts are missing out of this, but this is a very handy setup if you have square gauge blocks like these are. They have a hole through the middle of them, and you can screw them together and set up custom gauges of your own like this. And this has different kinds of end pieces for these different things. You could set this up like on a surface plate to scribe with, I guess, if you needed to do it that precisely. And here's some smaller end pieces, which theoretically, I guess you could set up an ID gauge maybe. I've never used them that way, but I guess you could do that. I usually use them just to set bore gauges on and things like that. And here's my kind of cheaper set of gauge blocks that I use out in the shop. I don't even remember what I paid for these things. They're New Line brand, I believe. I don't know what the numbers are, the model number or anything of this set is, but I bought this a long time ago. I've had this for, I don't know, maybe 25 years. I've used these gauge blocks, and like I say, the reason I like them is because they have this hole in the middle and I can screw them together. But you can also use rectangular gauge blocks, the smaller ones, and they have clamping devices that hold them together. Or you can even just use a parallel machinist clamp. I've done it that way before too when I needed to. But I kind of like these better because I can set them up like this, and it's smaller and it's easier to deal with than the whole clamp thing on the square rectangular gauge blocks. I mean, so that's my it's an 81 piece set type class B. Unless you're having gauge blocks for quality reference inspection, you don't need any better than a class B set, really. I mean, you can have class A, class AA, And for if you had a quality program and you need a reference to the National Bureau of Standards, then that would be the set you'd want, but that would be much more expensive than this. I doubt that I paid more than about $300-400 for this sort of inexpensive set, and it's been plenty accurate for me. If you buy a a name brand like a Mitutoyo or a Starrett or something set like this, that's a class A or double A, it's going to cost you like $2,500 for that, and in the shop itself it's not really necessary. This is plenty accurate enough. Somewhere, although I might have lost it, it came with a calibration certificate, but a long time ago. I don't know where that is now though. So these are just some of my measuring things. This is a thing you set a dial indicator on to measure. See if I can open this. You set this. I haven't. The indicator's still on here, but you set it up with this to measure the inside of a shallow groove or slot or something like that, or even a bore. I've used it to measure a bore very precisely that was too shallow to fit my bore gauge in. And I like this. This has worked good for me. Kind of a little expensive. That's the SPI number for this. Over here's the box of my OD mics, and these are just a Fowler brand OD mic, and I've had good success with these mics. I don't have any complaint. I think they're plenty adequate for doing what I do. I've had some people in the comments kind of criticize these, but I've used all different brands before, Mitutoyo, Starrett's and everything, and I can't tell that these are inferior to them. In fact, might very well be that all those brands of mics are rebranded and made in the same place as these. I don't know. Anyway, I have no complaints, and this thing cost half as much as a equal set of Mitutoyo or Starrett brand mics. And Fowler technically is an American company too, so I don't know. I also have larger measuring tools that I sort of keep up here, like a set of 48-inch veneer calipers. These are micrometers. I don't know what sizes they're. The size is on the other end of there, and these things up here are the gauge maker gauges. I think this is a little bore scope thing. Another set of rectangular gauge blocks. Various things up there. And these are the boxes for my bore gauges. Keep them over here, but that have all the anvils and various things in them to set different diameters. I was talking about the gauge maker thing. Let's see if I can up here, this is their little, I don't know if you can see that, their little icon. This is a little software that GaugeMaker sells. I got it because I bought some other stuff and it came with it, but I think you can buy this separately, and this is a very handy piece of software. I'm not sure how you would order it. You'd have to contact them. Maybe I could figure that out, but in here, if you enter in, you see it does UN threads, UNR, UNJ, Acme threads, stub Acme threads, stub Acme modified, two different modified stub Acmes, metric threads, MJ series. I guess those are the same as the UNJ, but they're metric, and 45-degree buttress threads and general purpose pipe threads. So it does all this stuff, and it gives you the dimensions. Like if I enter in a diameter 1.5, my major diameter or nominal diameter, and say it was a 12 pitch thread, and then I just put calculate here, it gives me all the dimensions of this thread. I don't know if you can see that or not. It gives me all the dimensions there, but it also gives me the ring gauge dimensions of like if you wanted to make gauges yourself, like the plug gauges and various things like that. And this is the information that the gauge maker device. So if you're using this point diameter, you're going to set the gauge to these diameters to measure the pitch diameter. So it gives you all these dimensions of and you can even on this, you can even change the wire size if you're using thread wires. Print this, print it out. So here's the information it gives you on the regular V thread, just the standard printout. And if you look at this here, you can see it gives you the internal and external dimensions of everything right here. The pitch diameter, major max, you know, for the internal, minor max, and the settings you would set it for with their gauge. But like I say, if you want to change that thread wire size, like this one here, you can edit this and put in an unusual diameter if you need to, or the thread wire size. I don't know if you can see that with the light like this. The thread wire size that you have in your thread wire set, and it'll recalculate all these dimensions based on that wire size that you put in there. Well, see here, if you want to use a new wire size, you can set it in here, and you just enter the wire size right there, and it'll recalculate all those parameters of that thread, or the dimensions, based on that wire size that you put in there. But it also will do those angles for you know, like API ring, seal ring grooves and everything. You can do that too and set it with this as well. So that's a very handy software. I'd have to call them up or something and see how much that costs if you were interested. I don't know if anybody would be interested in that or not. So anyway, I'm over here working on stuff right now because it's nothing else to do with all of this you know, social separation they're talking about. And although the situation here in Houston is not bad yet, but I have a feeling it's likely to get worse. I think that in reality, all of us will end up getting this one way or the other, if not this round, an upcoming round of it. So it's just this thing that's gonna, just like everybody's had a cold and everybody probably has had the flu at one time or another, we'll probably end up getting this eventually too. Hopefully it won't be that bad. And you know, I don't know if this social separation and all that stuff's doing any good or not. I guess it'll draw it out longer, and like they say, reduce the slope of the curve, so to speak. Anyway, I haven't made a video in quite a while because I've been very busy with this, because the customer is now getting very anxious to get these parts. And it is taking a while to set this all up and get it working. Between getting the tooling, getting the holders, and in between having like this welding done here on the part. And the original process had EDM work for the keys on this end of it, which I eliminated by milling them in there. So, and also kind of learning the new version of Esprit too. Took me a little bit of time. Just hear the simulation here. Cool, you can see the whole thing. So I don't know if you can see that or not. Maybe if I zoom in on it a little bit. And you see all these holes that are in this part? I don't know if you can see them all just in this center section. And the ends have you know, I made a little bit of videos on the ends. So anyway, that's what I'm up to right at the moment. And fortunately, the CB thing is not really impinged upon me too much at all. In fact, here in Houston, the whole shop here at Centerline is still working. Everybody's coming to work, and although not today because this is Sunday, but doesn't seem to be too much of an issue right at the moment. But as I say, I think that's liable to change eventually. It's going to catch up to everybody eventually around the world. Just a matter of time. So you see, there's nobody here right now. So this is just kind of a quick video. Just wanted to make something. Put out there. Kind of walking around the shop here. I think I said in an earlier video they just bought these 3 Haas's here like a couple months ago. The VF5. There's 2 VF5s over there too. 2 VF6s. They seem to like these Haas machines. I think the 50 taper machines do pretty good actually. I can't really say too much bad about them. I think they're at least as good as this Toyota mill is here. Mazak Slant 50. It's my CMM here. Probably ought to sell that thing. I don't use it hardly at all. My grinder is back over there. It's my horizontal mill. The stock area with the cutoff saws. Seem to have a good amount of work in process here. I'm not really into that part, you know, with them, so I don't know. A couple of Haas horizontal. These 1600 types, and another VF3, 2 more VF5s, and this is a old machine that I actually owned when I had the shop, the VF2. But they seem to be having good success with these Haas's, and on these 2 machines here, as well as those 2 other up in the front, those VF5s, they machine nothing but Inconel on these things, and they seem to be holding up all right. So I don't know, a lot of people downplay Haas mills, but they're getting the work done for these people. Various stock over here, racks. Well, they have to inventory this stuff every year too, man. I used to not carry any stock in our material in stock, I should say, so I never inventoried it, but they do. It's a Sharp mill, like the Series 2 Bridgeport kind of little plunge EDM machine. Mirando lathe, regular Bridgeport mill over here. I had this one in the garage. I had this machine originally in my garage in that Mirando lathe, and I think this this Cincinnati tool and cutter grinder I had in my garage at one time before I started the bigger shop. Bunch of heat treated steel there for something. Round bars. See, they keep very good track of all this stuff. They got, you know, because you have to nowadays, or you can't use the material. You have to know where it came from, have the certifications on and everything, or you can't use it on a job. That's in the modern machine shop. You got to have traceability of everything you use. So if you don't have any traceability, it goes in the scrap bin. That's where I get a lot of my fixturing material. Actually, over here behind my machine, a lot of this stuff, although they do keep track of it, is drops off of bigger bars and stuff, and a lot of times I can use that as a fixture material. They let me have it, or I buy it from them, one of the two. More material on pallet special stuff, you know, some more specialized profiles of they've even had these numbered. Wow. You know, these have special profile of some sort for a job. Here's the shorter pieces like this, see? Not totally sure what they make out of those. So anyway, I got to get back to work here. Just thought I'd make a quick video. This is like a one-take thing, what I'm doing here right now.